When the sun disappears this April, it's not just an eclipse, it's a signal. 7 years ago, the 2017 total solar eclipse carved a path of totality across America. Its dark shadow crossed not just one, but 7 towns, called Salem. Now in 2024, another total eclipse on April 8th will cast its shadow in a chilling pattern. The path of totality will pass directly over 2 towns, Nineveh, Indiana, and Nineveh, Ohio. Both Salem and Nineveh are names from the Bible. But that's not all. The intersecting paths of the 2017 and 2024 eclipses create an ominous X over Illinois and Kentucky. This celestial X carries an unsettling weight. Just weeks ago, a powerful storm system tore across the very same areas, tracing an eerily similar path to the upcoming eclipse. This ominous connection draws parallels to the New Madrid earthquakes of 1811 and 1812, a sequence of over 1,000 quakes that began just weeks after a total solar eclipse on September 17, 1811.
Welcome to another episode of You Gonna Learn Today. On this episode, we're talking about Tituba, the black woman who started the Salem Witch Trials. Let's go. Most of us are familiar with the Salem Witch Trials. We've all been told hyperbole regarding some accusations of witches and some being burned at the stake. It turns out this is not true, and yet there is another little-known fact that has been rarely mentioned in history books. The Salem Witch Trials started over a black woman. This is the story of a woman named Tituba, the Black Witch of Salem, Massachusetts. Mass hysteria broke out in Salem in 1692 over claims of witchcraft and Satanism. The first person to be accused of association with the occult was an Afro-Indian woman named Tituba. Tituba was originally from Barbados.
Now let's get right to business. Peace, family. Welcome back to the channel. We still on their ass. Yes, we is. And today, we mainly focus on this word Salem. If you already hit to this and you've been paying attention, you know about the Salem Witch Trials. We also got the Salem Eclipse going on, the Salem Solar Eclipse. That's going to pass through the Salem cities of America. But let's talk about the history of these Salem cities. Now let's go over the definition of Salem. It says, a name of uncertain origin and meaning, but traditionally interpreted as a synonym of Jerusalem and associated in the meaning of shalom. Now, what is shalom? Where did it come from? So it says, shalom is a term used by the Jewish people, meaning peace. But you see, the word salam is also connected to the word Muslim, and the word mu, meaning something of. That's why we can't forget that all of these religions are connected to each other. Remember, everything was created by the Romans, meaning all roads lead back to the Catholic Church, and Catholic means universal. It's a universal spell. So when we talking about the distribution of slaves, these Salem cities is where a lot of these slaves were kept. And these particular events took place around 1692 to 17th century. And you see, in these Salem cities, they kept the Muslim slaves away from the African slaves. They kept them separate from each other because they didn't want the Muslim slaves teaching the Africans. And don't get lost, because we got to remember that we was here first, so we started everything. So there were black Muslims too. So there you go. They called the city of Salem the place for righteous. And it's also said that Salem is a place where these witches would gather.
Tituba holds a unique place in history as one of the central figures in the infamous Salem Witch Trials of the late 17th century. Tituba, a slave from the Caribbean, found herself accused of witchcraft in 1692, marking one of the earliest and most notorious witch hunts in America. Her alleged involvement in occult practices, along with her storytelling and herbal remedies, led to suspicions. Tituba's arrest triggered a chain reaction of accusations that engulfed the Salem community. Though her ultimate fate remains unclear, Tituba's story serves as a stark reminder of the hysteria and injustice that can arise from fear, superstition, and societal pressures, shedding light on a dark chapter in American history. Subscribe to our channel for more bite-sized glimpses into captivating historical events. Stay curious.
So keep this in mind, that they separated the Muslim slaves from the African slaves because they didn't want the Muslim slaves to teach the African slaves. And this is where your white witches with black hair came in. They sent these witches in to put a spell on the white Muslims and the Africans. This spell was called the Leviathan spell.
Have you ever wondered why God created the Leviathan and then destroyed it? Well, stay here and I will explain it to you. Leviathan is a being that for centuries has been recognized as monstrous and very terrifying. It is a sea beast that is named in the Old Testament and very often associated with Satan. Leviathan lives in the sea. According to rabbinical texts, Leviathan was created on the 5th day of creation and then was subdued by the archangel Gabriel with the help of God. Some say that Leviathan has several heads, like a multi-headed dragon, while others say that in the beginning there were 2 Leviathans. But God killed one because he realized that if they joined forces, they would have been able to destroy the world. According to Hebrew legend, this refers to the Leviathan and his mate, since she is the reincarnation of Adam and Eve's serpent. God created a male and a female Leviathan, and then killed the female and fed her to the righteous, because if the Leviathan would procreate, then the world could not cope with them. Comment where it...
So basically, in their Bible, they refer to this thing as the Leviathan sea serpent, created by God. And he created 2 of these motherfuckers. They're saying 2 of them will be too much for the earth, so he killed one of them and fed it to the righteous. And the other one he created somewhere swimming around in the ocean today. But mind you, they only discovered only 5% of the ocean. My thing is, family, if you read about this Leviathan sea serpent, it says that it's chaos, full of evil, self-destruction, jealousy. It's a lot of bad, evil emotions that come with this sea serpent. And you telling me that God killed it and fed it to the righteous, the chaos. So they saying the Leviathan spell came from these witches, these white witches with black hair, who was sent into these Salem cities to breed with the Africans and trick the white Muslims. They were sitting there to breed with them, have sex with them. So basically, if they saying that these white witches with the black hair, they came through with this sex magic and this Leviathan sea serpent meat. They came and fed these slaves these sea serpent meat and gave them some coochie. And they started breeding with them. And this resulted in them producing a mulatto type of black people. And they used these mulatto type of people to make the Africans with the African features feel ugly and less of themselves. You know what I'm saying? They tore their self-esteem down. And they highly favored the mulatto with the straight hair, crossbreeds. All this took place in these Salem cities across the U.S. And they governed these people in these cities by men who referred to themselves as sheriff. And then they used the 6-point star, which is really not a star. They call this the shield of David in Israel. And this shield is used to protect them, just like what you see in today's time. It's their badge of honor. And the word sheriff is just an extraction from the Arabic word sharif. This originated from the noble family of Prophet Muhammad. So a lot of descendants of Sudan, they were shipped to the Salem cities in the U.S., while in Africa, by Africa and the Nigeria-Uganda way, a lot of those slaves were sent to Haiti and the Caribbeans over that way. But they left a certain kind of slave in the U.S. They left them there so they could intermingle with these witches and had them some kids, just like the devil. just like Zeus did. So they gave these crossbreeds more privileges than the originals. And this type of situation is still going on today. Sort of like the house Negro. And it's also a tactic they use for divide and conquer. Separate us by color of our skin.
The biggest problem out here in New Orleans.
The niggas.
This is New Orleans, the murder capital of America.
You've been shot 8 times?
Twice in both of my arms, twice in both of my leg, one in my chest, you hear me?
You working out here?
I mean, I got niggas, yeah. I'm really like a wife type.
Okay.
These are people I went to school with.
You've been f***ing them for that long?
I mean, I've been f***ing since I've been like 15.
Any last words about New Orleans?
I mean, the food always good, dick good always.
Wicked in the streets, bro.
What do you mean by that?
Hey, you gotta keep it pulled.
You never know when you're gonna get mugged. You never know when you're gonna get jacked.
Anyway, New Orleans is the jungle. Kidnapping, carjacking.
If I were to leave my car parked out here,
It wouldn't be out here for an hour.
A lot of these cycles stem from the 90s, bro. A lot of these kids don't know why they fight.
do you think the music impacts the next generation of kids?
Everybody in the music video throwing Dracos, and y'all don't gotta do this because y'all see another nigga doing that shit, you hear me?
They're ignorant and don't give a fuck. They want everything for free because their great-great-grandfather was a slave.
Do you think people would agree with you?
Yes.
But the witch trials are not really about witches. It's about stealing land. Because if you don't like your neighbor, and your neighbor has a nice piece of land, and you want to buy it, and your neighbor won't sell it to you, all you got to do is go to the authorities and say, my neighbor's a witch. As far as we know, none of the people who were put on trial for witchcraft were actually witches.
They weren't witches in the sense that, like, no, they weren't witches, or like they weren't even claiming to be witches.
Right. They weren't even claiming. So any sort of folk medicine, folk practice was automatically labeled witchcraft.
It's crazy to think that if I made a bright blue smoothie in the 1600s, they would have hung me and thought I was a witch. Like, how simple-minded were they back in the day? Definitely get hung if I pulled this out in the 1500s. They'd be like, what is that?
So, you hear what she said? They would hang her. Yes, they would. But we got to pay attention to why they took these witch allegations so serious. Because we got to remember, a couple thousand years before then was the War of 1492 between the Haitians and the French. And we know that the Haitians defeated them with this magic, black magic. So, you know damn well they ain't fucking with that shit, man. At this point in time, it's a lot of motherfuckers who scared of anybody on some voodoo shit. Because you got to remember during this war that their skin was falling apart, eyes coming out the socket, hair falling off. They were falling apart with this black magic that the Haitians were using to defeat them in 1492. So fast forward up to the 1600s, you know they ain't fucking with no shit like that. It's only certain ones that knew about the black magic, you feel me? The rest of the public, the population, they don't know nothing about that. They the civilians. All they know is they scared of that shit. And anybody who wants some voodoo shit on some black magic shit, they a witch. But hold on, family, don't go nowhere. Let's tie everything back together. So we on the ass. Now you gotta ask yourself, what type of ritual supposed to be going on in these Salem cities? But you see, we so blind and programmed and cursed by this Leviathan spell that we ain't focused on it. We still on the surface. They got all the ancient knowledge. They know what's going on. They know what the earth is supposed to be doing during this solar eclipse. And a lot of us do too. But a lot of us still lost, like lost soul, misguided souls.
I won't stop stressing this enough, but when you're a child of God, it's imperative that you always put on the full armor of God. I wanted to share something about exposing the spirit of the Leviathan. The spirit of the Leviathan, number one, it lies. It lies and it twists the truth. But first of all, before I get into that, let me just explain to you what the spirit of Leviathan is. The spirit of Leviathan is a spirit. It's a spirit that comes from a marine kingdom. So this particular spirit operates, is associated a lot with confusion and chaos. It does not want the order of God, and it often it torment, like, you know what it does to its victims. It often makes its victims think that there's always something wrong with them when there isn't anything wrong with them. So here are just a few signs. Here are just a few signs that you may be dealing with the Leviathan spirit. Number one, the Leviathan spirit is very, very prideful. In the book of Job 41 verse 34, it speaks about the enemy holding things. He beholds things very high, and he is king over all the children of pride. So the number one reason why God kicked Satan out from heaven is because he was influenced by pride. Number one, he was influenced by pride, and pride is one of the sins that God hates. The word of God speaks that pride comes before a fall, and this particular spirit often, it operates a lot in pride. Number two, the spirit of Leviathan twists the truth, whether it's with the word or whether it's with particular events that have happened. Normally what it does, it makes its victims, or the people that it's trying to pull down, it makes them feel like there's something wrong with them when there isn't. And another thing, what the Leviathan spirit does is that, like a person who's influenced by this particular spirit, they either hate fellowship or they don't receive the truth. Like, it's pretty hard to speak the word of God to these people.
So there you go. The slaves of these Salem cities were put under this Leviathan spell, full of chaos and self-destruction, self-hate. Your self-worth is insufficient. So what's going on? What's going to happen on this April 8th with this solar eclipse in these Salem cities?
But was originally from Barbados and was an ethnic mix of black Africans and Arawak Indian, according to historians like Samuel Drake. She was enslaved in Barbados on the Thompson Plantation. Slave transport documents show that she was inherited by Samuel Parris, who brought her to Massachusetts. Tituba was married to an indigenous man named John Indian, as verified by the church record book kept by her owner, Samuel Parris. Tituba was the first person to be accused of practicing witchcraft by two white women, Elizabeth Parris and Abigail Williams. Tituba had a close relationship with Elizabeth Parris because she was the daughter of her owner, Samuel Parris. Tituba used voodoo as spiritual practice for divination and healing. She began to teach Elizabeth some of these practices before being accused of using black magic. After being arrested, Tituba was scheduled for trial. In an interview with Robert Caliph for his collection of papers on the trials, titled More Wonders of the Invisible World, being an account of the trials of several witches lately executed in New England, Tituba confirmed that Parris had beaten a confession out of her and then coached her on what to say and how to say it when she was questioned. After she was tortured, Tituba confessed to practicing witchcraft, which included worshiping and speaking to the devil. Tituba attempted to explain her voodoo to the hyper-religious group of Puritans. They, ironically, claimed to America to practice their version of religion without persecution from the Roman Catholic Church. Tituba repeatedly asserted that she was not a witch, but to no avail, even though there was no proof that she used any magic for harm. Tituba was sent to jail in Boston to await trial and punishment on March 7, 1692. Tituba's knowledge of voodoo, position in society as an enslaved person, and gender and ethnic background served as the basis for her being the primary scapegoat of the mass hysteria among the Puritans. By being at the intersection of these discriminatory factors, it was easy to convince the people that she worshipped the devil and practiced demonology. Here is another example of black and indigenous spiritual practices being demonized by white communities. In all, 30 people were found guilty of witchcraft, and 19 people were executed by hanging, the majority of them being black. Tituba, the Black Witch of Salem, spent 13 months in prison before being sold to another slaver. Now you know.